Hello and Happy New Year, everyone. We're super excited to kick off the new year with this special event with Michelle Kline, making 2025 the best year yet for your pet care business. Michelle is the former owner of her own pet care business, which she sold in 2023. And after selling her business, Michelle started Dog Co-Launch to take what she learned and help other businesses grow too. Following the session, we'll be answering some of your questions, so be sure to stay tuned till the end. Let's kick things off. Welcome to 2025. We're super excited to have Michelle Kline joining us today for making 2025 the best year yet for your pet care business. We're always honored to have Michelle join us, and we can't wait to have her share more with you. It's crazy that 2025 is already here, so we're excited to learn more from Michelle today.
Awesome. Well, I am super excited to be here. Can't decide, is this clear? Too bad. No, y'all can see me. Okay. I'm super excited to be with you guys tonight. I did a webinar for Pet Pocketbook back in maybe November and just got to get connected to a lot of phenomenal people and excited to meet more of you tonight. So a little bit about me. I completely forgot to include an introduction slide, so I'll just give you the verbal rundown. My name is Michelle Kline. I am the founder of Dog Co-Launch, where I focus on helping pet care businesses grow and scale. My specific expertise is in building dog walking services, so building like recurring dog walking clients. I had a full service pet care business that I transitioned to dog walking and adventure services that I scaled up through the pandemic to 25 staff and 600 clients before selling it in 2023 so that I could focus on doing what I do now. So now I work with quite a few companies in our industry to help on operations, marketing, strategy, all of the things that we all know it takes to run a business in this industry that's growing and thriving. So thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to be going over some 2025 strategy on making this the best year yet in your pet care business. Now, you guys are getting a bit of a special behind the scenes bonus because this actually is a webinar that I did as a bonus introduction webinar, or part of it is for my mastermind companies who are starting with me next week. So this webinar is adapted off of some private content that I did for them on getting started really well into the year that I was excited to share with Pet Pocketbook as well, or with you guys. So we have a lot of content to get through, so I am just going to jump right in. I did want to mention though, I really like taking questions as I go. I prefer more of an interactive webinar than necessarily I am only presenting. So feel free to drop things in the chat. I will keep an eye on that as we go and pull up or pause to answer questions if anything is on your radar. I did buffer a little bit of time for that, so feel free to ask questions or comment as we go. So there are 4 sections to tonight's webinar. Number 1, taking a critical look in review at 2024 with the lens of what needs to be eliminated out of how last year went. Now, when I say critical, I mean detailed. I know you guys don't know me, but shamey is not my vibe. We are not looking at 2024 through the lens of like shame and criticism. More so with a very detailed lens of where did my time go? Where did my finances indicate was a priority to me? And what are these key areas that I need to keep an eye on going into 2025 that maybe bottlenecked my business, stunted the growth, or put the business and myself into a relationship that I did not enjoy in the last year? So we're going to do some critical evaluation, and by that I mean detailed look at 2024. Next, we are going to start. So tonight's very heavy on the mindset. The further I get into business, I know it sounds very woo-woo, but the more that I believe that mindset really is what tends to make a year very impactful for us versus what tends to make a year where we feel like we did the same hamster wheel once again. So we're going to talk about some mental frameworks on getting started with this year and specifically making the commitment to see the year through. We're going to talk about getting to the end game of whatever your goal is this year. What will it actually take to get there? And then talk a little bit about celebrating your wins. I am a big fan of, I'm not crazy about the idea of like working to work. Um, I love work, so it's not that work is a bad thing, but I think we also want to make sure we're working towards things that we want and towards things that enhance our life and enhance what we want to do with our life and with our business, rather than just being on this treadmill. So, talking about factoring in reward for hitting our goals as we go through this year. All right, so there are three areas that I would recommend taking a look in review at 2024. We'll cover all three tonight. So, number one, time. Number two, financial investment, spending. And number three, your personal environment. So, I really like to anchor on this question of what would you like to build? We're looking at 2025, so maybe looking specifically at the upcoming year. What would you like to build in 2025? I would encourage you as we're going through the webinar, think about some specific goals that you maybe want to set for the upcoming year. You know, sometimes when I start working with a business, their goals are, well, I want to grow. I want this year to be better. I want to feel like this year was more successful. And that's a good starting place. But what we want to do is make sure that we make your goals more specific and concrete so that we know what we are aiming for. I also would argue that we make them audacious. My kindergarten teacher, I'm really sorry if I told this story on the last webinar because I love it and then I forget who I've told it to, but my kindergarten teacher had this big sign above her like chalkboard that said, reach for the moon, even if you miss, you land among the stars. I just like embodied that as a 5-year-old. I was like, okay, that is now my life mantra. I still remember it on her kindergarten wall. So that's kind of the framework I encourage. Let's keep in mind when we are setting goals, when we are thinking through our goals, you know, what would really push us this year? What would challenge us out of our comfort zone and kind of force us to think about things differently? So, following that up with a bit of a anchored reality truth, unless there is an intentional and a distinctive change, 2025 will most likely be the same or very similar to 2024. Now, if you are thrilled about how 2024 went, carry on. I love it. If it's working, do what's working. If 2024 either didn't end the way you wanted it to, or there's something about your business that, you know, you kind of left the year like, I don't want that again. I want this year to be, you know, markedly different in this specific way. We are going to have to look at, okay, you know, without change, last year and this year are going to be the same, and change takes intention. So we want to pull that into knowing more of the reality of why did last year go the way that it did? What are those inputs that gave us the output of how the year went? And then what of those inputs do we need to change? So Alex Ramosi has a phrase or a quote talking about how one of the biggest ways you can predict the future is actually a past audit on historically what is your time and your spending gone towards. They really indicate what your priorities have been. And again, not in like a criticism kind of way, it's just where we spend our time and where we spend our financial investments are a pretty good indication of what we prioritize. All of this can be changed. It's not that a historical review of whatever you see in your calendar or whatever you see in your finances is this like marked truth of who you are or who your business will be, but it does mean that that is the reality of how things have been. So if we want change, if we want things to look differently, we have to see first what is that reality so that we have a baseline to actually compare that change to and put things in place to make a difference. I really like this quote. The first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. So if we are looking at what is the reality of our business, what is the reality of my time, of finances, all of that, starting with what's actually happening so that we can have something to measure against. So first focusing on where are we today? So I call this section a personal like state of the union. Let's just take stock. Let's look back at the last year and kind of do an audit on time, spending, and environment. So and actually, I'll go to the next slide because I'm going to break all three of these down. So one thing that I encourage every single company that I work with to do is to do a couple weeks at the start of every year where you are very intentionally tracking your time and tracking your time to see where it goes. I'm not sure if anybody here is familiar with the phrase like time blindness, but it can be very difficult to actually have a lot of self-awareness around where our time is going. I remember I had a very rude awakening around this. The first time I time tracked, I was because I had a coach who was like, I would like you to time track for 2 weeks. And I was like, I'll do it for you if you insist. Like, got to make my coach happy. So start time tracking. And I'm like, check my phone a lot. I wonder, maybe I should just keep a little tally of how often I do that. 3 hours later, I'd picked up my phone over 100 times, and I was like, okay, I understand now. This was a practice of self-awareness. So there's a lot of opportunity of things we can learn about ourselves. So starting with where is our time going to really get a look at what the reality is of just where we spend our time. This is a practice that I think will carry us really well into 2025. So, one thing that I always challenge companies on, challenge, in an encouraging kind of way. If a company says, I'm not getting new clients and I'm really frustrated, one thing I will ask them to do is take a look at how much time have you actually spent on marketing in the last month. And sometimes, it'll be like, oh, well, honestly, not much. I've been really busy. And here's the thing, I get it. I ran a 25-person team. There are very few business models, I think, that deal with the amount of just noise on a day-to-day basis that a pet care company does. However, if we want new clients and want to grow our business, the reality is we have to market and we have to put time and resources and focus into that area in our business. And our time is going to tell us, okay, here's the reality of the lack of investment in that area. But it can be hard to see when you're in the day to day. So this is a spreadsheet that I personally use when I am going in to do a time audit. It's just something I put together in Google Drive, where I like to take a look at what was the activity, how much time did I spend. I categorize it, so work, personal, wasted time. Like if I'm on my phone just doom scrolling, that was a waste. There was nothing good that came out of that. I also, if it is business related, assign a monetary value to the task. So what will that action theoretically return? I like to force a yes no on could this have been eliminated with a system? Should I delegate it to somebody else? Or is this a task that I should do again? So I'll spend a couple weeks every year in January doing this really thoroughly, like on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis. And then I'll kind of bring this practice in through the year. If I feel like I'm losing touch on some of that control over my time or at least awareness. So this is a practice you can do to get some of this time clarity. Few other things that we can do to get a sense of our time. Number one, your phone usage report, the little notification you get once a week where it's like, do you want to know how much time you spent on Instagram? And you're like, I really don't, but let's maybe start looking at this report. Just taking a sense of how much time is really going into social media and different things like that. Another practice I suggest doing is a calendar audit. So I started doing something a few months ago that has been really helpful where So I have a wind down checklist at the end of the day for myself where it's like I close out my inbox, I review my texts, and just kind of like make sure the day is ready to shut down. And part of this end of day checklist for me is I go back into my calendar for the day and I update everything to reflect what actually happened. So, helping my calendar start to reflect, okay, I had a lot of very idealistic ambitions for today. Here's what actually happened. And that's helpful because then you have data to go back and just really take a look at where is my time going. Color coding your calendar, I'm a huge fan of. I have a screenshot of mine on the next page so I can talk to you about my system a little bit. And then finally, this one of the most simple solutions ever. I have a little clock. It sits on my desk and it's my focus clock. And I turn it on and try and either hit certain numbers on it where I don't get distracted, I'm not picking up my phone, or I will set this to count down a certain amount of time and just try and work until the buzzer runs. I want to say this was $7 on Amazon or something like that. So, not expensive. That can be a really good solution as well. When it comes to the color coding, I suggest having color codes for personal, for professional, and then for different areas of your business. So I can take a look at this from a pretty quick glance and see, okay, social or marketing for me is light green. And this week was pretty light on the marketing for me. If I really want to get new clients, as I look at this, I'm like, okay, this is going to need some adjusting because a lot of other areas are getting more focus for me. You do not have to be as insane about your calendar as I am. If you look closely, you will see I do schedule my showers and walking my dog. I just really like to know where my time goes. You don't have to adhere to that level of insanity, some would say, but you can. And I do know when I showered, so there's that at least. So recommendation, however crazy you want to go with this, just put a regular time on your calendar on, say, a weekly, monthly basis. I prefer weekly, where you are just doing an audit on your time, an audit on your calendar. Where is my time actually going? Is it in alignment with where I said I wanted to go this year? This book is a phenomenal read. If you have not read it, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Really highly recommend. I'm going to recommend a few different books tonight. This would be the number one that I would start with, especially if you have set some targets this year that you want to make sure you hit. All right, finances. I know this tends to be the least fun of any type of self-reflection, but taking a look at what are your dollars voting for when it comes to the future. This going back to that Alex Ramosi quote, two clearest indicators of what will happen is where you have invested time and money. So one of the most difficult pieces, I believe, of becoming a business owner is money management. It's the number one reason that businesses close is from like money management and a lack of cash flow. I have found that personal money management and business money management are also very closely tied. And so I have a series of sub goals for every company that I work with where it's like, I talk to them about their goals. I'm going to help them meet those. And then I always have this like secret list I'm working on too. And one of my secret agenda items for every company I work with is to feel empowered around money, to feel like money is working for you rather than against you. Because if we feel out of control financially in our business, one, from experience, that's one of the worst feelings you can have. And two, well, like low key, it leads to horrible decision making. Like if you are in fight or flight mode of just, I have to figure out how to make payroll, I have to figure out how to keep this thing afloat, that is not our highest level best self. So we want to make sure the money is working for us, that we feel in control of that. This is just a personal practice that I do every January if it's helpful for you. January, I take the opportunity to get to a financial baseline, to do a heavy audit on the year before, and to make sure that I just do a reset on everything this time of year. So good time to have this webinar. Again, this is going to sound intense, but it's once a year. It's not all the time. So I call and renegotiate all of my insurances. So home, car, those things sneak up over time, just making sure I'm getting good rates. That can save you a lot of money over the course of the year. I personally get rid of all subscriptions. I force myself back to a baseline. The rule is I can add it back in if I miss it, but there are a lot of things that are just kind of running in the background. And this is something I do for business and personal. I would hazard a guess that every company in here, if you pulled up your QuickBooks and looked through software subscriptions, you probably have 7 or 8 things that are 10 to 20 bucks a piece. That, it's, if you're looking at it individually, it's not that much, but how often do we use it? Is it returning value? Are we letting it run in the background because it's a subscription that we forgot about? It's just a good time of year to take a look at that because that can really add up for you. I mean, that can be $200 or $300, and I'd rather see you pocket that if it's not something that's returning value to your business. Finally, I do a big audit where I total up categories on spending. I do this business and personal. And then this is a practice I recommend every single business owner do. Go back over the last year and pull out any one-time big purchases that were not expected from your business. And what I do at least is I take that total number and then I average it out for a monthly like savings goal towards one-time expenses for the upcoming year. One-time expenses are always going to come up. They're frustrating because it's like I don't know what they will be or how much they will be, but we can work off of an average from the previous year as a really good starting place. And then June, I kind of go through and do like a light audit on this again. And if y'all have questions, feel free to drop them. So a few other action steps just on financial success for this year. Number one, I highly recommend you have a separate account for tax savings. This is just going to make it clean, clear. It's going to remind us every time we look at it, that is not my money. That is money that is going somewhere else. Skim money off the top when you have income come in. This is a practice that I started about halfway through owning my business. It's very nice to not dread tax time. I know many of us do because we don't know what we'll owe, or if we are skimming money off the top of our income to put into a separate account, pretending it doesn't exist, that will future you is happy with that decision. Next thing that I did that very much helped my business financially, that just for success, I think is something to consider. I call this CapEx in this webinar. I should have retitled this to savings because I kind of confused a lot of people when I called it that last time. So to re-explain, sub that word for savings. So the best thing I ever did for my business was set a separate business savings account that I kept 2 buckets of money in. One was a bucket that was the we never touch this, like the I don't want to use that word in case people the oh crap bucket. We're not dipping into this. That's if we get into a weird spot with payroll. And that is, and Pippa, I can. I'm actually really glad you asked that because that's an error on this slide that I needed to change. You should actually still do this if you're an S Corp. The S Corp taxes are just a little different. So I'll come back to that in a second. So the second pot of money in the savings account was an amount that I would use for one-time expenses. Anytime I took from that money would then every week I would have a set amount that I would put back until I replaced that like spending line. So I treated that as like a flex line in the bank account or in my savings account that I could take from to do one-time investments in the business. And that was really helpful. It definitely made me feel more free to invest in certain marketing because I had already set aside money for it. Going back to the question on S Corp and taxes, your tax liability will be different if you are an S Corp. I actually think it is still a good practice, though, to set up a tax account and to move money into that tax account. It's just going to be a different amount. And that is what I needed to correct on the slide. And I actually learned about this last night and didn't get a chance to redo the slides. But you should still have a tax account no matter what if you're LLC or if you're electing as an S Corp. It's the 20% that if you're a single member LLC, that's my ballpark. Some CPAs will recommend more, some may recommend a little bit less, depending on how much net profit you're on average pulling. But S Corp, you still need to put aside taxes. It just won't be quite that much because you're not having to pay Social Security tax on it. And then the final one, if you have employees, you want to make sure that you are reviewing labor at a minimum quarterly. I recommend you're reviewing labor monthly. I think it's a really good practice, the start of every month, to review the previous month, look at net profit, evaluate expenses, things like that. But at a minimum, every quarter, make sure that your labor is staying under control. There are, how do I put this? If your labor is really high, it's very difficult to get other pieces of the business moving correctly. That tends to be the bottleneck financially, is if we are paying too much out in labor. A rough ballpark on labor is 40 to 50%. I personally am comfortable with companies being up to 55% as long as they are running pretty scrappy when it comes to expenses. I have found that if companies are getting in the 60% plus, unless they're like 7-figure or near 7-figure, it can start to feel very tight from a profit perspective. So I would recommend that we are aiming to be around 50% in our labor. Part 2, if you do not have a bookkeeper, I have some phenomenal recommendations that I would be happy to make. Getting a bookkeeper is the best hire I ever made. So, and the Possum Metric spreadsheet suite, I apologize. I should have tweaked this slide to not reference the mastermind, but Corinne Moore is the creator of the Possum Metric spreadsheet suite. They are included with the mastermind, which is why I reference that here. However, she does sell them individually. You don't have to enroll in the mastermind to get them. She currently has them up for sale. If you Google Possum Metric spreadsheets, they are phenomenal. They can help you get some really good data out of your business. And then finally, I have a couple book recommendations. So feel free to grab a screenshot. Both of these were incredibly helpful for me. Give it one more second. Okay. And I will send these slides to Nicole so that she can send them out or add them to wherever the recording goes. All right, finally, if we are looking at our audit 2024 in review, taking a look at our environment. So what around you is working for you or against you? So there are a lot of ways we can interpret this. The people we have around us, the actual work environment we have set up, accessibility of resources, but we want to make sure our environment is working for us. There is one company that I work with really closely, and we were talking a lot about like motivation and hitting her goals. And she made the comment, I share an office with my husband, and I think that's it. I think that's just really difficult. I'm distracted. He's loud. It's pulling me out of focus. So we spent a coaching session figuring out, okay, where in your home could we set up a separate workspace? And that she actually hit all of her goals last year, but getting a separate workspace was hugely important to that. So that stuff really does matter. Going into a season of no, if you have high goals, might be really helpful. So just getting very specific on what's on my no list and what is a yes for me in this season, and taking time to evaluate that. This is an Alex Hormozy framework, but most people don't succeed because they are not doing the thing that matters the most enough. They do the wrong thing or they do the right thing, but not for long enough. So this is a framework we can use to evaluate our actions. Or sorry, evaluate like our environment and the relationship there. This is a really great YouTube video on that Alex Ramosi did on Season of No, What It Takes to Win. That if you Google it, it will come up. All right, the next 3 sections are much shorter. So I will have you out of here by 7. I know it is a weeknight. So number 2, getting started, a commitment to continuing going. So I believe this with everything in me. I cannot lose if I do not quit. One of the biggest tools that you can have in your toolkit as an entrepreneur is the ability to purely outlast competition. Very few people have the resiliency to continue going in their business through the ups and downs of the market, of the hiring environment, of the shifts in the market with client needs and all of that. Cultivating the ability to purely endure, and that's, we're going to do better than that. We're going to innovate and we're also going to succeed and all of these things, but purely the ability to endure and to outlast is a skill set in and of itself. Oftentimes, we are incredibly impatient as entrepreneurs. We are here because we like creating things in the world and we like seeing the fruition of what we create come to life. And that is a good thing. We need people like that in the world. The byproduct of that, though, is sometimes we don't sit with what we are doing long enough for it to work. And that is going to be a dangerous path. So, some realities I want to anchor you guys on for 2025. Number 1, you are going to come up against unexpected challenges. We are at the start of a new year, and it feels so shiny and pretty and exciting right now. Well, maybe we're a few days in, so maybe we're already in the reality, but bear with me. We're in the shiny new relationship honeymoon phase of this year. This year in this way will not be different than any other year. Unexpected challenges are going to come up. Number 2, it is a certainty that at some point this year, you will want to quit. You will question, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why did I take this client? Why do I have this staff member? And so we just want to accept that there are parts of this year that will be hard. And then finally, you may identify areas this year that you have to take a step back before you can keep going. I know as entrepreneurs that can feel really discouraging. However, I believe at least that even with these realities, what you are creating in your individual communities and in your business is work that the world needs. It's work that your client needs. It is worth doing. It is worth doing for your personal future as well. So the phrase, we cannot lose if we do not quit, our ability to outlast competition can be one of our greatest skills this year. Following that thought, most people do not have the pain tolerance to be able to stick with a hard thing for a long time. This is an area you can win. And this also is why I love working with pet sitters, because we are a resilient type. You can't pick up poop all day and not develop a certain level of emotional resilience. So I think in this specific arena, we got this. So I encourage all of you to make the commitment in 2025 to give this year your all towards the goals that you are working towards. And part of that, I encourage you to remove the emotional temptation to tap out. I think there is nothing more damaging to a business than an owner that has one foot in and one foot out the door. Now, that does not mean that we do not have interests outside of our business. That does not mean that maybe we don't have other things we are working on that we want to bring to life as well. But if you, like, every month are coming up against, maybe I'll shut it down. Maybe I just won't. Maybe this is the last year. If growth is your goal, you cannot pick up poop all day. If that ends up being the quote that gets associated with Dogco, I'm not upset about it. I'm here for that. Wonderful. I'm going to see that on a t-shirt somewhere and I just can't wait. Um, so removing the emotional temptation to tap out of your business. Like if we are setting goals, let's go for the goals. I think it also is going to far increase the chances that you hit them. All right, and then finally, I encourage you to take a look at, just this really light, easy question. What beliefs are you bringing into this year about yourself? It's not light, it's not easy, it's actually very deep. But I've invested probably $25,000 personally in coaching in the last decade of becoming an entrepreneur. And I would like to tell you the number one lesson that I took from all of that money, which is swapping the mindset I am not good at for I am not practiced at. I know that it's a framing that feels very small. It's hugely impactful. I am not good at math. I am not practiced at math. I am not good at managing people. I am not practiced enough at managing people. It turns it into something that's within our control to change. So please enjoy that very expensive mindset. As part of this, there is a book I'd recommend, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. It's been quite a while since I've read this, but I did get a lot out of it about pulling as much as you can into the arena of control of your own life and really looking at your own empowerment within whatever you have committed to, your business as an example. All right, so let's talk about number 3, getting to the end game. And if you have questions coming up, please drop them in the chat. I'd love to pause for those. So what will it take to get you where you want to go this year? This is a question that I really like to anchor all of my goals around. What are you willing to sacrifice as part of the goals that you want to hit? You know, if it didn't require sacrifice, we probably would have hit these goals already. There's going to be a sacrifice of comfort, a sacrifice of time, a sacrifice of maybe financial resources. If there's a skill set you need to learn that we need to figure out how to get like you access to that education or to that lesson or to that knowledge. So I think really identifying on the front end, what are you willing to sacrifice this year to hit your goals? And maybe having an honest moment with yourself about that of, if learning this new skill would take 6 weeks of an extra 2 hours a day that I can't watch Netflix or I can't see friends some nights that I want to or I'm used to doing, is that a sacrifice I'm willing to make? And it doesn't have to be necessarily that binary. I actually really reject the premise that success has to be tied to more time all the time. I love this question, Leslie. I'll come to that in a second. But actually, I'll come to it now because I lost my train of thought when I saw your question. Okay, so what is the best way to market when you do not have the finances to market properly? So, Leslie, I rarely paid for marketing in my business. There is so much you can do that costs little to nothing. So, the areas I do recommend investing are a pro Canva account. That's going to cost you 15 bucks a month ish. And then this can be controversial. Hang in there with me. Magnets for your staff on their cars or for your own. Like your car, such an incredible vehicle for marketing, whether that is a wrap. You don't even have to do a wrap. You can get like decals for your windows that are super cheap. You can get them on Etsy under $100. You're good to go. Everybody sees your website and number. So out of that question, the first thing I would do is challenge the assumption that marketing takes money. Money, sorry, I got twisted up on my words there. And as Julia mentioned, I'm not an insurance broker. You should call yours before you do that. That is a very good disclaimer. But if your insurance does not have an issue with it, and also the biggest hesitation people tend to bring up to me is they don't want to market that their clients are at home. Fun fact, it actually increases security and safety of the client's home for a professional service to be coming by. So that's good too. But I would start with challenging the assumption that marketing requires money. Money can put momentum behind marketing, but we are in a relationship-driven business. So there is so much we can do based off of referrals, based off of being in our local community. One of my biggest lead flow sources was flyers at coffee shops, which blows my mind, but I was really consistent. I would go in, I would make sure they're current. I would go in once a week and make sure they're like the first thing you can see on the board. I spent a lot of time designing them and making sure they were easy to read and very bright and getting feedback. So there is so much you can do without marketing or without money for your marketing. I would say the actual biggest hindrance is going to be creativity. Because when we are in, I think that's the biggest detriment to most companies' marketing, is marketing can feel so, one, scary because it's a new skill set that, you know, nobody comes out a good marketer. You have to learn. But two, getting new clients can feel so tied to the survival of our business that I think that fight or flight mindset can make it really hard to have a lot of creativity around our marketing. So if we can learn how to take a step back and to just creatively envision what would get the word out, what would get my brand in front of people multiple times. I love this story because it strikes me as just one of the most creative things I've ever heard. There was a dog walker in California when I had my company. I've tried to find her since and I haven't been able to, but she was on Instagram and she would walk dogs with a pink cowgirl hat on and pink cowgirl boots. Now, please do not walk dogs in cowgirl boots because your feet will fall off. I do not know how she did that for as long as she did. However, she would just film herself doing this and became branded and known as the girl who walks dogs with a pink cowgirl hat and boots on. And that was her lead flow. Like she bought the boots, she bought the hat, done. And then she just made content. So there's no limit to what we can do with creativity. All right, so getting into this idea of sacrifice, what's it going to take to hit our goals? So everybody loses before they win. Nobody hits it right out of the park. I mean, maybe unless you have a pink cowgirl hat, but who knows what she tried before then. Everybody loses before they win. So I would argue we need to build the resiliency to fail before we can succeed and to actually make failure the goal more so than the success. By that, I mean getting to the fail point as quickly as possible so that we can get the lesson for the next try. This is a mindset I have worked really, really hard on personally for the last couple of years. It's not seeing failure as failure, but seeing failure as data. So, as entrepreneurs, there's very little in our business that is ever truly done. And that can feel super frustrating because it's like, oh my gosh, I just want it to be perfect. This business is my baby. It's the thing I'm most proud of. But really, what our business is this iterative, like, collection of versions of our business. Version 1, version 2, version 3. Our teams are always like different versions of previous iterations of our team. Our client list, our services, our training manual. So, getting to the lessons to let us iterate to the next version is actually the quickest way to grow your business. So, again, going back to this idea, failure is not failure, it is data. This is an Alex Ramosi quote. Again, if you can't tell, I listen to him a lot. Winners pay with failure or by paying for others' lessons on failure. So, if we want to grow, if we want to get through some of these hard lessons, really we should be aiming to how can I get to the lesson of failure and expect that that will happen so that I can pull the lesson and go again. And that is why so few people do this. But if we can figure out how to weather that pattern and not take it personally, which is why I have to work on this mindset because I do, there's a lot of success on the other end of that growth. So success this year may, and by may I mean it will, require skills that we do not yet have. But there are very few skills that win out at the end of the day over an insatiable desire to improve. If we bring that energy into this year of I'm just looking to get the lesson and improve, and I am here, I cannot lose if I do not quit, and I will do that as many times as I have to get the business that I want and to hit the goals that I want to hit, you'll find your way there. So the mindset I encourage my mastermind members, try things, hit them as hard and as fast as you can, take the lesson and go again with the lens of I will improve off of what I learned. The most successful companies, so about 20% of the companies that I work with grow by like 120,000 a year or more. Like they have a really aggressive growth year. And I've noticed that a similar pattern with these companies is they don't try to wait until something is perfect. They go ahead and ship things into their business when they feel that I have enough data to be able to at least learn the lesson off of it. So going with this fast feedback loop is going to help you grow quickly. Another quote, I wrote this one actually. No matter where you start from, it is almost impossible to beat someone who's determined to improve every day. And this actually a principle that came from Atomic Habits, if that's a book that you choose to read. The compounding impact of 1% improvement every day is incredibly hard to beat. Improvement actually does not tend to come in these massive leaps and bounds. It tends to come from these small, tiny changes that build up over time. All right. And if you see opportunities to buy skills, take it. In hindsight, I wish I had done that more when I was coming up through my business. And my mastermind is full, so I have nothing to tell you. That was not a pitch. But if you see opportunities to enhance your skill set this year with just lessons you can pay for rather than having to learn yourself, that is just going to expedite your growth. All right, final concept, make the reward good. So what reward would be so good in your life that you would be willing to give this year your everything? So personal story here, at the start of 2022, I was drowning in my business. I had had massive growth over 2 years. We were doing about 40,000 a month in revenue, which sounded great, but I had no infrastructure. I had no management assistance. I was literally holding this business together like a barrel hug, just trying to keep it from falling apart. And in January, my best friend invited me about 8 months down the road for a future trip to go on a wine tour in France. And that is just so her. And I wanted to go so bad. And I knew there is no way, unless I shut down my business for 2 full weeks, there was absolutely no way I could go. And that was the carrot I needed for changing my business and putting in the infrastructure so that things did not need me to run. It was the hardest 7 months I had in my business. I earned that vacation, I can tell you that. However, that carrot was worth it. It forced all the change that I knew I wanted to make, but there was a lot of fear and I knew it was going to be hard. So there were certain changes I was putting off. And thank goodness you invited me, because that was what I needed. Like I needed something where it was like, that's worth the fear. So dream audaciously for what you want this year. It might be a big trip abroad. It might be a kitchen remodel. It might be getting your weekends back, remodeling your kitchen, getting a car, putting in a sauna, your backyard, building a deck. It might not be a thing. It might be having the ability to go see family more often, having the ability to like sleep in and not be worried that people are missing appointments by getting more sleep. Because I lived that for a long time. And I can't go to bed until the last person checks in on their appointment because I'm always the one managing. And there are better systems in place that we can put in place to enjoy what we want. So I encourage you, pick that audacious goal for this year. In my mastermind, we call it a wildly audacious goal or a wildly important goal. Of what would that be for you? So I left time at the end for questions. We have about 10 minutes. I'd love to know what thoughts or questions you guys have. Be brave.
While we're while we're waiting for questions to come in, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Michelle, for doing this. I feel like I've learned a lot tonight, and I think I'm myself going to do the time tracking just to see where I'm spending my time and where I can be more efficient. I think that's being critical of ourselves is definitely hard. But like you said, there's lessons to learn and we can learn from our failures. So I'm really looking forward to doing that.
I love it. That's awesome. Let's see. Best advice for new business owners. Ooh, I love this. Okay, well, software is number one. So you've already gotten that covered by being here. I'm assuming you're in Pet Pocketbook, and that is a great decision. Few other things that from the start would have made future business easier. Um, Transition your business to at-home entry only. So just don't even get into keys, lock boxes, garage codes, hide a key. My personal ethic with clients, you can do whatever you want. It just has to stay here. It is not something I can take with me. But I didn't transition to that model until I had about 100, 150 clients and about 10 team members. And I can tell you, like, as you start bringing in team members, the passing around of keys, the tracking of keys, it is just not worth it. The on-site entry is also more secure for the clients. And the amount of companies I have worked with that have had to get the police involved to get keys back because staff members had them and quit, didn't return them, went off the deep end. Just don't do this to yourself. Um, let's see, I didn't hear what your first business was and what you do now. I had a full service pet care business from 2017 to 2019 that when the pandemic hit, I transitioned to dog walking and adventure services. And through the pandemic grew to 25 staff and 600 clients before I sold it and now have Dogco, where I teach pet care companies how to grow and scale their businesses. What would you say is the first step to getting your business to run without you, assuming you have everything else in place? For example, hiring someone to manage the team. Okay, this is a really good question. So, changes you make on the team side and on the client side are going to need to mirror each other as you grow. So it's like we make some changes on the clients, we make some changes on the team, and then over time, these things kind of grow together. So to get things to run without you, one of the best things I ever did with my team, or I'm sorry, with my clients, is go fully team based. So this meant that anybody on my team could work with any client in our client list without needing a prior introduction. What this equipped the business to do is for all field work to be able to operate without me. I was no longer having to do that dance of, okay, so and so called out. I'm the only other one that's met their dog. I'm going to have to go do that appointment. I wasn't having to go like cross train people as I had turnover. Um, so going fully team based and figuring out how to do that safely, what kind of documentation I needed in our software for anybody to be able to work with any client was, I would say, truly the first step of me getting like distance from having to physically be in the field. After that, figuring out systems to manage the daily noise. So oftentimes when I work with a company, they want to start with like really top level positions. I recommend growing bottom up with this kind of business model. So, starting with the team, how can we get them operating with like a lot of standardization? Everybody is doing the same thing in the same order. Clients have really clear expectations. It's all very similar. Then, how can we put people in place to help train people to do that? Okay, how can we put people in place to help manage everybody that's doing that and building up from that direction? But I would start with going fully team based personally. See, learn from my lessons because they were painful. Okay, let's see here. Past few months have been pretty slow getting new bookings, monthly expenses, creating a reward incentive program, discounted rate. Oh yeah, I absolutely incentivize for referrals. Because here's the thing, the lifetime value of a client is going to far surpass giving like a free walk or a free credit or whatever it may be to get clients in. Now, I will say I personally found a really good return from clients by just being very honest with them of like, hey, we are looking for new clients. Would you be willing to let me send donuts for the staff break room at your office? Do you know any neighbors that need a dog walker? So I think direct asks can work really well too. I think sometimes we like over formalize referral programs, but I do think it's really good to have some type of incentive to give to your clients if they send you a new client. Let's see, do you offer online courses? So, Julie, I'd love a little context on it. Kind of depends on where your business is at. Like, if you've already hired people, if you are looking to build a team, like what skills you're looking to learn. I currently don't have any offers outside of my mastermind. It's a hefty endeavor what I do, and so it takes a lot of time. That probably is down the road for me, but at this time, no. But my next mastermind will be launching um, in June. So there will be more opportunities down the road. I will say my mastermind is for teams. I would recommend if you're looking to build a team, Doug Keeling is phenomenal. I would say that really is like his sweet spot. Sorry, I can feel my voice going at the end of the day. Doug is phenomenal. And I would say that really is like his niche. The hiring, helping companies prepare to hire. He has a really terrific hiring course. I don't remember if my promo code is DOGCO or DOGCO launch, all caps, but it'll get you $50 off, and he's phenomenal. So I would start with Doug. Keeling, here, I can drop it.
And Julia, we also have a code Pet Pocketbook that'll get you $50 off as well. So check it out. Like Michelle said, he's an incredible resource, and you can find our session with Doug on YouTube as well. So I'd be happy to send you that link as well.
Definitely use the Pet Pocketbook one because I don't even really know my promo code. I was just going to have you try different things. So use that one because it sounds very clear. And I just dropped a link to his course below. Okay, let's see. I'll do a couple more questions really quickly. We've struggled to find good, trustworthy employees. Where would be the best way to find employees? So personally, for me, I did a lot of grassroots marketing to get staff members. So I predominantly marketed on social media and by asking my personal network for referrals and by doing flyers around town. Now, I know that sounds less sexy than like figuring out an Indeed algorithm that makes us look like really professional and cool. Personally, for the hiring avatar I was going for, I didn't necessarily want people who wanted a professional career. I wanted people who had margin in their lives and felt that this would be restful and joyful work. That was the hiring demographic I was going after. So I had a lot of luck with that, and it was quite helpful. Let's see. Okay, 2 more questions came in, and then I'm going to wrap up on these. So Amanda said, I've heard from some people I should start charging for meet and greets with new clients. What's the best way to do this? Should it cost? Okay, so y'all will see a lot of different things in the industry on this. There are quite a lot of opinions on it. My personal, where I landed on this, so I tested both paid and unpaid meet and greets. My meet and greet rate went down significantly when I charged. They were clients who were usually ready to like really get going though. But when I wasn't charging for meet and greets, on average, I was doing 10 to 15 a week. When I was charging for meet and greets, that number pretty immediately dropped in half. There we go. Not sure what happened there. So my meet and greets almost immediately dropped in half when I started charging for them. Now, if you have more leads than you can handle, adding the friction of a paid meet and greet might be the way to go. Like if you are looking to build your team, you're not really necessarily wanting this to be like a floodgate, that friction can be great. Where I ended up landing with meet and greets is on a free meet and greet, but with a hefty disclaimer. We're going to book your first walk while we are together in person. So take a look at your schedule before I get there. We'll go over the software, we'll get it downloaded, I'll show you how to use it, and then we will book your first walk while I am there with you. For me, total win. I'd rather get more people in the door and figure out how to sell them, but that's my personal style. Okay, so 2 more questions and then I'm going to wrap this up. So what does a disciplinary action model for a team look like for business? Struggling with the idea of putting one in place. And this was a question that I think was accidentally sent just to me. Yeah, I think it looks like just having, so I had a 3 strikes policy. If you were written up 3 times, it was an automatic dismissal from our team. I had the right to bypass that if it was something that I felt warranted it, but that was what was in our handbook. That's what was taught to teams or team members when they came on board. But as we all know, there's a lot of gray area on what should be a write-up, should it be a write-up? I would just say make sure your policies are clear and make sure you have clear systems of accountability to talk to people about it and show them that you care about it. I work with a lot of people who they're nervous they're going to come off as nitpicky, but what that results in is their team really doesn't know they're underperforming on expectations. So I would say start there. Just really take a look at, are my expectations crystal clear? And then the next step, if the answer is yes, why aren't they meeting them? But I would start with, are the expectations actually clear enough? Okay, final question by Audrey. Do you focus on one particular area for dog walking and then hire a walker for that area? The eternal question, clients or walker first. I did do really targeted marketing. I would focus on very specific neighborhoods. I'm a big fan of having a hiring pipeline going at all times where you are nurturing potential candidates so that as soon as you have the clients, you can pull them into your business. So, yeah. All right. I think that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for everything. I really, really appreciate that you taking the extra time to answer some questions for us. If people do have extra questions, feel free to reach out to me directly, Nicole@pocketbook.com, and we can get some more information from Michelle if she's interested. And I know that we did have one question from Pippa about some of those bookkeepers, so I'll make sure to get that over to her as
Perfect.
well. But thank you so much for everything. Really, really appreciate it. Happy New Year, everyone. Really looking forward to making this year the best year yet for your business.
Awesome. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thanks again, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching and stay tuned for our next roundtable.